Okay then, we've had week 2 of the Overwatch League, we've had the reaction to the scores, now it's time for Team of the Week, as we always do, and also, if you watch Wall as well, you'll see he's doing Team of the Week now. Make sure you check him out, because he's doing the same format. He came to me about it as well, and I think that's awesome that other people are picking up the format as well, because I love Team of the Week format, and he's doing it in a slightly different way than I do. He picks 9, I believe, which is really, really cool. And I really do encourage you to go and check Wall out. Anyway, we are going to get into Team of the Week. Obviously, we haven't seen all of the teams this week. We had 2 less matches as well. So we are not going to have all of the same faces that we saw last week. In fact, actually, I don't think we're going to have any of the same faces, which is really, really cool. But there are a load of people doing really, really well. So if I forget to mention them in the video, then doesn't mean I don't think they're doing well. Probably because I just forgot to mention them. Which is bad on my part, I suppose you could admit that, yes. Anyway, and plus I'm recording this video after I've had the COVID vaccine, so I'm a bit papega in the head. Anyway, let's get away from that. We're going to start off with our supports as we always do. We always start off with a main support, and the main support this week is going to go over to the Houston Outlaws. It's going to go over to Juby. Now, I never expected to be giving Juby Team of the Week spot this early, simply because he was a collegiate player, right? He was playing for HU Storm before the season started. Houston picked him up and people were like, what? You know, there was not too many players in NA contenders that Houston could have picked up. I will admit that, because a lot of them are underage. People like OG and people like that. American Tornado. They could have picked up Aspen, but clearly they saw something in Juby, and my goodness me, they certainly saw something, because this guy, not only was he popping off last week and didn't get a spot, he's been popping off this week as well. Houston have had a fantastic week. They got the 3-1 against Paris, they swept London fairly comprehensively 3-0. Really impressive stuff from Houston this week, and I tell you what, the support line for Houston is solid. So ridiculously solid, and I did not expect it to be as solid as it is, which is really impressive, and a lot of that is down to Juby. Last week, I know we're not going on last week, but last week he was diffing FD God, who was a role star on the Lucio last year. So, very impressive stuff from Juby. Very, very impressive stuff. He knows how to balance his aggressiveness and his passiveness. He's just getting everything spot on right now. And for a player that is relatively inexperienced, yeah, he's got experience in NA contenders, but he dropped out of NA contenders to go to HU Storm and playing collegiate Overwatch. And for a person who doesn't have a massive amount of experience at the highest level, he has hit the ground running absolutely phenomenally. He's definitely one of the biggest surprises we've had so far in these first 2 weeks, Juby, without a doubt, and I am happy to eat my words and say I was wrong about him. And incredible job by the Houston scouting to go and get Juby, because my goodness me, what a pickup. Anyway, Juby goes into my main support slot. There's plenty of other main supports you can do. You know, Closer had a great week. Jexa had a good week. You know, there's so many main supports that you could put in the slots. And a lot of them you can as well, which is really, really cool. Like, I probably wouldn't be putting Calyx in there. But, you know, it's within reason, right? Next up is the flex support role. As ever, you can have a main support without a flex support. You know, that's how Overwatch works. Mind you, you can have double flex support sometimes. Anyway, that's a different conversation. We are flex supports. Flex support is always quite stacked, because flex support is actually, in my opinion, one of the best, sort of, the most highly skilled positions in the league. There are a lot of great flex supports when you look at the likes of Twilight and Violet and Alarm. And then you've got people coming in like Aztec and Lastro and people like that. There are so many good flex supports, creative at the Soul Dynasty as well. So it can be a very tough one to call. Alarm is on my honourable mentions for this week, because Alarm is just, well, Alarm. He is darn blimmin' good. And I tell you what, there is just not much you can do about it. Alarm is always going to be right up there near Team of the Week. I can't think of a week where Alarm's had a bad week. He may have had a okay week, or a good week, or he may have had an outstanding week, but he's never had a bad week where you've looked at him and said, holy mother, he has lost that for Philadelphia Fusion. So Alarm gets an honourable mention, so does Crimzo. I almost went for Crimzo, I'm not going to lie. Crimzo, again, part of the Houston Outlaws, another person that has surprised me no end this season so far. Really stepping up with Junkbuck in charge now, or co-head coach of the Houston Outlaws now. He is getting the best out of these players, that's for sure, and out of a support line that on paper you would have expected to do nothing in this league. So, you know, I've got to hold my hands up. The coaching at the Houston Outlaws is doing wonders with this, and Crimzo is actually in the form of his career right now at the Houston Outlaws, and he should be very well praised for that. So he gets an honourable mention here as well, but I have gone for Bebe, because Bebe, alongside Closer at the Washington Justice, this was the questions we had about the Washington Justice going into 2021. You've got stacked players on the Washington Justice. You've got people like Decay, Jerry, Tuba, Assassin, Mag, Fury. You know these players are going to do fantastically, right? Because they are just so high caliber. But when we looked at the supports, the only position they don't have any subs for, they had Bebe and Closer. Closer had a rough time of it at Spitfire, even when Spitfire were doing incredibly well, and then had a rough time of it at the Dallas Fuel. So we were like, well, he's not really anything good. Bebe, he was okay at the Hangzhou Spark, but didn't really stand out too much. Then they've come to the Washington Justice, and we were like, are they going to be what the Justice need, or do the Justice need something better? Are these guys going to bring them down? Well, this week, they certainly didn't. They enabled their tanks and DPS to do exactly what we expected them to do, and that is to pop off. Washington Justice had a fantastic week. They 3-1 Vancouver. Yes, they lost the map, but Vancouver have this knack of taking the map against pretty much anyone they meet. So, you know, that's just Vancouver things. And they 3-1 Dallas. So this is exactly what we expected from the Washington Justice. They are doing fantastically well. And it is off the back of really consistent and good support play, especially from Bebe. Again, much like Juby, he's getting the balance just right. And we don't always see that from players, especially in a flex support role, when they're playing things like Zen. We don't always see that from players. Two examples of that last weekend is Izayaki wasn't really getting it right. This weekend, actually funnily enough, at Bebe's ex-team, Hangzhou Spark, MCD was not really getting it right. He was getting a little bit aggressive. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But Bebe's getting this balance correct. And what he's doing when he's on the Ana, the BAP, the Zen, whatever he's on, right? He's getting the balance correct. He's enabling his team. And a lot of the time, support play can go a little bit under the radar. Now, Bebe, I believe, got MVP of the match between them and Vancouver, which thoroughly deserved, by the way. But sometimes support play can go under the radar because you've got your DPS popping off. You basically, well, you could say that Jonak got the MVP in 2018, right? But the thing is, he was playing basically DPS Zen. So very often you see DPS-y sort of plays get a lot of the attention. And also, like, tanks to a certain extent, but mainly DPS. And a lot of it can fall under the radar. But these guys, the tanks, the DPS, they can't do anything without being enabled by the supports. And therefore, you need to know who to nano and things like that. Something weird about Philly's weekend is that, yeah, their nano targets are a little weird. That's something that also brings me down with Alarm. And it's not necessarily Alarm's fault, because it's the way Philly play. They always nano Carpe instead of nanoing Mano. But sometimes that nano is just kind of wasted, because Carpe's going to do enough damage to get what he needs to get done anyway. And so you're just kind of just making Carpe's life easier, rather than getting more value out of the actual nano. So that's something you can also look into. But I think Bebe did really, really well this week. I went on a massive tangent there. I think Bebe did really, really well this weekend. And then I'm going to give him that flex support spot, because now we're going to move on to our tanks. And yes, we are going back to the Houston Outlaws for our off tank. So yeah, that makes it pretty obvious, right? It's Piggy. The other half of the main tank option we had last week, obviously last week we saw Django in the main tank, and I tell you what, Django will be getting an honourable mention again, because my goodness me, that guy is ripping this league apart. But Piggy, he's not actually as flash as Django, his tank partner, but my goodness me, this guy gets work done on that off tank. He really, really does. There is plenty of fantastic, outstanding off-tank play. Fury is very close to this spot as well, like very, very close. Out of this weekend, you see a lot of play. Right, Hopper's done very well. You can also say Elsa's done fairly well at the Chengdu Hunters, although probably not as well as Hopper. You can say that Bianca had a good weekend for New York Excelsior. You can say that Hanbin actually did very well for Dallas. You've got a lot of people like that. Even Elliot had his moments at Paris, and Space had a good weekend. But the two that stand out to me this weekend are Fury and Piggy, and it's very difficult for me to choose between them. I am going to go for Piggy though. Fury, he's just incredible, right? He's still an incredible off-tank, no matter what I don't know when Fury's been bad. Like, can you name a time when Fury has just been bad? He hasn't. He was part of the London Spitfire squad that even during the GOATS era, Prophet and Fury were popping off. Even when they weren't doing well, they were popping off. And Fury, no matter what team he goes to, always does well. He did well at Philly, did well at London, and now he's doing well at Washington Justice. And he is just excelling in the role of off-tank, as he always does. But Piggy comes in as this, not unknown. He was at Talon, so he had a history in contenders. But no one expected this tank line to do as well as it actually is, which I think is, there is a big testament to be had here for the Houston Outlaws coaching. And I'm starting to get quite hyped about the Outlaws coaching. They're turning Juby into a fantastic player. They're turning Crimson into a fantastic player. They are turning two tanks, Django and Piggy, that came in as well. Okay, these guys could be middle of the league tanks, to holy mother of God, they are possibly one of the best tank duos in the league right now. That is insane. And I can say it myself. Like, at the start of this season, I was looking at this team and said, oh my, they're going to be carried by the DPS. Like, they're going to be carried hard by the DPS. And then Happy's just ascended, like, to this new level of crazy. We've seen some crazy plays from Happy before the Guangzhou Charge. My goodness me, he's ascended to godliness, the Houston Outlaws. So whatever's going on with the Outlaws coaching, it's darn well working. And if they carry on like this, I don't know who's going to stop them. But very, very good. And Piggy did very well last week as well. But this week he's done really, really well. Massive part of Houston sweeping their opponents this week. Yeah, they may not have been as difficult opponents, I suppose you could say, this week, but they are still absolutely fantastic, and nothing should be taken away from their performances. We now move on to the main tank. Again, a role that is hotly contested this week. Muse stepped up for the Gladiators this week after having an extremely poor first week, being called out by two very good teams. Again, Django. Django. Like, this man is just over here MTDing whoever he finds. Like, my goodness me. He is so good. I cannot explain. Like, if you're a main tank player and you have access to the replay viewer, the Overwatch League replay viewer on PC, go and watch Django's POV out of these matches that we've seen in the first 2 weekends, because you will learn so much. You will learn so much. And yeah, it's just wow. Anyway, enough of me going crazy. I can't believe I'm getting crazy about a Houston Outlaws player. I didn't think this was going to happen at the start of the season. Fearless, he's on my list as well of honorable mentions, because Fearless, again, he stepped up. Fearless was, again, not as good as Django, I would say, but yeah, Fearless, he got to demonstrate a lot of Winston, because he got in a Winston duel with Mag in the Washington match, and both of them were popping off from time to time. However, Mag did get the better of it in the end, and therefore, for his performances this weekend, Mag is going to get my main tank slot. One of their biggest prospects coming into the league in this off-season was Mag on the main tank, and he's just not disappointed at all this weekend. Mag stepped up. He led the team, he led Washington Justice, and he led them to 2 wins. Can't ask more than that. And Mag, I can't wait to see Mag versus Jangu. In all honesty, I can't wait to see Mag versus Jangu, because that will be, at the moment, the way it's looking, that will be the battle for Rookie Main Tank of the Year. Those two, I don't know who's going to win. If you'd asked me before the season, I would have said Mag hands down. But Jangu stepped up. So I can't wait for Washington versus Houston. That is going to be so good when we get to see that. And those 2 tanks taking on each other. I hope we're not in hero pools or anything. I want to see that as a clean and fair fight. That is going to be match of the year. I really hope that's going to be match of the year. Because, oh boy, that will be so good. Anyway, moving on from our main tank role. Mag thoroughly deserves that. His Winston's insane. His Ryan's insane. He's just Mag things, alright? Moving on, we have DPS to talk about. We have seen, again, good performances. Something I wanted to point out, again, we're going back to the Houston Outlaws again, because, you know, the Houston Outlaws tend to make a lot of headlines at the moment in this first 2 weeks of the season. An honorable mention goes to KUSF, because I've started calling him KUSF, because I think it sounds funny, but KSF. KSF had even though Houston did really well first week, I didn't rate KSF when we saw him play. This week, however, much better. Much better. He was doing so well. He did have a poor map, but he did much better. And I did want to give him a shout out and make sure he's recognised in this. Obviously, Mr. Decay at the Washington Justice was having a lovely time. Decay, he was getting some crazy stuff done on the Tracer, not gonna lie. And on the Ashe, he played Ashe as well. He's played a lot of stuff, Decay, this weekend. But again, it's nice to see him in there. What I like about the Washington Justice DPS is that they are not reliant on Decay. That is something I was extremely worried about going into this season for Washington Justice, but we're not. We're seeing them change things up. Assassin's getting time. We're seeing, I don't know whether we saw Tuber or not, I can't remember now. But definitely Assassin's getting time, Jerry's getting time, and Decay is getting time. In this slot, which is mainly occupied by Tracer at the moment, it's the flex DPS spot technically though, I'm going to put Sparkle, because I have been overwhelmingly impressed with Sparkle's play. Overwhelmingly impressed with Sparkle. Last year, on the Paris Eternal, Sparkle came in, you know, he was this really hyped up flex DPS player. Problem is with Sparkle last year, he locked the May. He didn't look that convincing. He's great at Genji, he's great at Doomfist, great Pharah, obviously, but to be honest, we didn't really see much of that. We did go into a brief Genji meta last year, and that's when Sparkle really found value. And when we saw Dallas Fuel pick up Sparkle, we were like, okay, he's good, but he doesn't have a massive varied hero pool. But we have been pleasantly surprised because Sparkle has clearly been grinding the Tracer. His Tracer at the moment is some of the best play I've seen from Sparkle in the league. Even when he was playing Genji back on the Paris Eternal. He is doing so well. He was carrying fights against Washington Justice. Yes, Dallas lost. Don't get me wrong, Dallas lost. But not Sparkle's fault. Sparkle was doing phenomenally well and was a major part of them sweeping Boston. Like, they swept the floor with Boston. Yes, Boston weren't the most organised of teams, but let's not take that away from the individual play. And Sparkle was doing this last weekend as well against the Gladiators and against Houston. Sparkle is proving a lot of the doubters wrong in these early parts of this season. It'll be interesting to see what happens when the meta changes, but boy oh boy, he is doing fantastically and really deserves this spot in my opinion. But that leads us That leads us on to our final spot. This is more of the long-range hit scan spot we're seeing at the moment, although some people are subbing in a Tracer at times. We're seeing a little bit of Tracer Sombra, very occasionally. But Jerry actually had a really good weekend for the Washington Justice. We saw Jerry in the long-range hit scan role much more than we did Decay, which I think is a surprise to a lot of people, but I also really like it. It shows a lot of diversity and flexibility within the Washington Justice roster, which, to be honest, I was worried it was not going to be there. I thought Jerry was going to be a main bench player, and Decay just sort of be poster boy that always plays, a bit like Carpe in some respects for the Philadelphia Fusion. But that's not been the case, and I'm glad that Washington Justice have gone down that road. We have seen again a lot of great performances. Happy again has clearly been doing great. When does Happy not do great? Let's be honest. We even saw Jake, as a matter of fact. I forgot to say that in the Flex DPS role. Jake did okay. We're also seeing great play from Birdring at the Gladiators this weekend. He deserves a shout out. Flora at the New York Excelsior. He has his up and downs. I'm not going to lie to you about that. But he's had more ups and downs this weekend. That's for sure. Although NYXL got pasted by Chengdu Hunters. That was harsh on them. Leave had a really good weekend for the Chengdu Hunters despite their 1-1 record this weekend. If I was to point out anyone that has done particularly badly, it would probably be Hybrid of London. But that's about it, really. No one else has kind of like done completely rubbish. So I can't really be completely down on anyone. However, I am going to be giving this spot to poster boy of the Philadelphia Fusion. It is Carpe. Yes, he is back and he is doing the Lord's work for the Philadelphia Fusion once more. It's a worry as well as a good thing for me, because I liked the Philadelphia Fusion of last year that wasn't relying on Carpe when they had Hisu. And now we are back to the Philadelphia Fusion that not only are reliant on Carpe, they basically feed Carpe whatever he does, for whatever he needs. They basically give him nanos, they give him anything. Like, anything and everything. It's pocket Carpe, Carpe kill. That's exactly what Philadelphia Fusion are doing. And in all fairness, who am I to question that, because it's working for them? To the point in which if a team shuts down Carpe, I'm not sure what the Philly Fusion will do, but that'll be an interesting thing to find out later in the season, maybe, if someone managed to counter them, especially when the meta changes and it may fall slightly out of Carpe's favour. You never know. So that's something, but right now, in this moment, Carpe is doing fantastically. He really cleaned up house against the Chengdu Hunters really well, mainly because Chengdu Hunters, if they're going with a game plan like they did against Shanghai Dragons, where they were shut down Void, to a certain extent, if they'd done that to Carpe, they probably would have got more done. But Carpe was allowed to do a little bit too much at times, and he ended up ripping them apart. So Carpe's going to get this spot. These videos are getting much longer than I ever anticipated and thought they would, because I think every video is hitting over 20 minutes right now, and I apologise for that, because I don't mean it to. I just talk too much. Anyway, our team of the week for week 2, GB, Bebe, Piggy, Mag, Sparkle, and Carpe. Honourable mentions to a bunch of different people I have said during this video. And yeah, team of the week 3 is going to be an interesting one, because there is going to be a lot more games to choose from. So there's going to be a lot more teams in action. There's going to be a lot more. It's going to be a much bigger pool of players to choose from. So yeah. If you want to discuss any of this, please join my Discord server where we can all have a happy discussion about it. Happy was not a joke. It was just me saying it was a happy discussion. I don't know why you'd have a happy discussion anyway. I'm going on too long. Please join the Discord if you want to discuss anything Overwatch League, contenders, Overwatch, even gaming related, even IRL. There's an IRL section these days. So, you know, if you just want to talk, join my server. I'm there. You can talk to me directly. Imagine. That would be fun. I don't bite, I promise. I promise. Even though people in Illusion sometimes think I do, because I go into their DMs and they get worried. Anyway, also the socials for Illusion Gaming are linked in the video description below. Make sure you give the Twitter a follow and everything like that. Also, my Twitter is linked in the video description as well, so give that one a follow. But for now, thank you guys so much for this video. If you'd like to give a like, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next video. See you then.